Just a quick note, if you have bought the cabinet effect, you might not have obviously exactly the same items that I've got in here for this one. You might have different items, but they will be sourced as old as possible, and they will be intriguing and they will look interesting, but they just might not be exactly the same as this. But obviously the tutorial will be the same, and the method will be exactly the same. Thanks for buying the cabinet. It's an original idea by, or the premise is an original idea by Barry Richardson, and it's from his book Theatre of the Mind, which is fantastic. So many great effects. The way this one works is you will write an open prediction on a piece of card which goes on the table. 2 spectators will take part. 1 spectator you will ask to pick an object from the cabinet, and as they do that, the other spectator will literally think of a letter of the alphabet to correspond with that object. So then you go through the process of asking them for the different objects, and then the other person will think of a different letter for each object, and then once you get to your target item from the cabinet, which I normally use the music box, you then kind of bring the demonstration to a halt. You ask the person what letter they are thinking of to correspond with the music box. They say whatever letter it is, and then you've predicted it on the piece of paper. They can read, or whichever spectator you want to pick can read from the letter, and it will kind of say something like, when the person on my left picks the music box, the person on my right will be thinking of the letter so and so, and it's predicted on the card. It uses a Swami nail writer. I'm not a massive fan of using Swamis or nail writers, especially out and about when you're doing things, but in this controlled environment, when it's kind of a parlour effect, it's so easy. I mean, you can probably go through a whole evening with a nail writer on and not many people are going to notice. So just to do it for this effect is, you know, especially the way you're sitting, the way you're holding yourself. The reason I've picked the card is that when you write the letter down, it's kind of a natural thing. One, you're covering the nail writer as you do it, and 2, being a piece of card, it makes it so easy to write it. So what I've done is, and I think the reason I've not written it on here is because you can use, I've supplied a pencil, you can write your own prediction on there in your own handwriting, and then you just leave the corner, either the right hand corner if you're right handed, or the left hand corner if you're left handed, just to put in the prediction. And you kind of store once you've brought the effect to a halt and you've picked whichever box it is, you can kind of store them in a little way by saying, you know, what was your thought processes for thinking of that letter? Was it random? Was there a reason you picked that? And while that's happening, you can then just be writing the prediction on the card, and then popping it back down on the table, and your job's done. So you will get the nail writer. I've also put in a pencil which does write, so you can then write your prediction on the piece of paper in your own handwriting. But I've also, once you're coming to perform it and you've got that written, and you're just at the beginning of the performance, you'll say, I'm just going to write something down before we start the procedure or the effect, and you kind of go to write, but I don't know if you can hear that, but I've made the pencil non-writable. I've basically coated the end with some nail varnish. I've given it 3 or 4 coats, so you might want to, after a few performances, recoat it with some nail varnish. But it just means that you can physically write on there, and it sounds like you're writing something, but nothing's actually coming out, obviously, until at the end when you do it with the nail writer. That's the basic effect. Most of the objects that you have are genuinely old. I really like to source things that are from antiques fairs, eBay's a fantastic place that I've found a lot of things. Some things are newer that I've made to look old, so that is kind of a newer music box that does work. Does work. Does work. There you go. But I've sanded that down to make it look old. Also, with the music box, I have got another effect that I use that kind of forces the tune on somebody. So it's almost another prediction effect involving the items in there as well. And other things you can do, which I've done before. I've replaced some things with decks of cards that you can do tricks with. This one is an invisible deck effect. I've got the BIP book test, which can go in there as well, that kind of looks genuine, and I've made that to look a bit older as well, that kind of fits in with everything. So then you can go and do different effects. So you can kind of substitute, you can use what's there, or you can substitute what's in there with your own effects and carry on and do other things. So it not just becomes a one-trick pony. You can then kind of use the whole thing for a parlour show. Just a few other things to show you. The glass is not glass, it's Perspex. So that's just a bit more of a safety thing, especially when I'm going to be shipping it out. Also, you can hang this on the wall, so you can make this a feature if you wanted to, in your study or parlour or wherever you're doing your effects from. Yeah, hope you enjoy it, and thanks again for buying.